friends, welcome to the Purple Zone, where public policy, practice, and people meet. Because policy isn't abstract, it's personal. So let's talk about it. Hey friends, welcome to the show. It's Alexis. So glad to have you here on the Purple Zone. I've got my friend Matt Todd here with me. He is the host of the Ranch podcast. And today we're going to be talking about some of the things that are happening in January, some of Matt's experiences with them, and some of the ways that parents can get involved, and also just leaders around the state in things that are happening over the next couple of months. Matt, so great to have you here.
God bless you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, and it's always so funny to say that because this is your studio. We got like the ranch tags like on the microphones and stuff. We have your Godzilla behind you.
Yeah, I think you have the cow on your headphone too. Oh no, I have it on mine.
Yeah, you've got it on yours.
Yeah.
I made one mistake as I was starting. I said, "Hey, welcome to the Ranch podcast," and I was like, "We got to start over."
Got it. It's good.
Yeah, we got to start over. So today, as it's the start of the year, and my phone was open. Here we go. On Tuesday, January 20th is Idaho PTA Day on the Hill. And this was something that you helped me with a couple of years ago. When I was the state PTA president, I got into some of the advocacy and legislative things that the PTA does, the Parent Teacher Association. And the Idaho PTA is the only parent teacher association in the state that brings parents together, which is really cool. So it's the parent voice in the state of Idaho. And so over the 120 years of Idaho PTA, there have been different organizational things that parents have done to bring their voices together.
Sure. Yeah.
And so in the fall, we have had over the years what's called Advocacy Day. And Advocacy Day has been a day for parents to come together. In some of those decades, the PTA worked with the Idaho School Boards Association. They worked with the Idaho Education Association. This would have been in the 50s and 60s, where those associations came together. They were all, the ISBA was pretty young at that point, and IEA didn't have a legislative arm that was strong and robust. So these three organizations worked together to get some of their legislative stuff together. And so what they did often was these organizations would say, what are things that are happening in the state? What are things that we know that are coming in, the legislation that we're going to work together on or that we're separate on?
May I ask a question?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the School Boards Association is a voluntary collection of people that were like, okay, what if we had a group that represented a view or the perspective or the interests of school board members across the state? So it's like, okay, the legislature is proposing something having to do with education, and say the populace likes it in general, administrators like it in general, but the school boards are like, whoa, that would be really problematic for us. And nobody's asking us. And for instance, within West Ada, there are only 5 school board members, right? 40,000 students. So it's like the 40,000 may really like it, but the school board might say, hey, wait, you're actually going to tie our hands with this thing that's really, really important. And you, the lawmaker, you may not know that, because you may not have been a school board member, but let me educate you a little bit on our perspective and what's happening for us and why this might be good or bad. Same thing, obviously, the IEA is the Teachers Union, Educators Association, but there are these different associations, which again, I didn't know until I met you, that are like, no. These groups all function independently because they represent different pieces of this puzzle. And the different pieces of the puzzle have different rules. They have different motivations. For instance, the SBA, School Boards Association, they're not trying to get better salaries for the school board, right? IEA, the teachers union, might be arguing for better salaries for the teachers, and God bless it, whatever. But we have different motivations and different orientations for groups. So it wouldn't make sense to combine the IEA, the teachers union, and the school boards association, because again, you're representing different interests and considerations.
Right. Thank you so much for clarifying that. I appreciate it and asking the question because, the School Boards Association, I believe it started in like the 1940s-ish, and they came together for several different reasons. And, I think one of them was what you just articulated. What's interesting is that about the mid-60s, these 3 groups stopped working together legislatively.
Interesting.
There was, I would love to say kind of like a kerfuffle between the teachers union and the School Boards Association, just in terms of it was funding, how they were going to do funding for education. And because this has been a century-old conversation when it comes to funding for education, just meaning that like it's a continual thing. There's just so many different things that are, components of it. So they, that kind of relationship in that way, when it was about legislation coming together and making comparisons and all that stuff, ended at about the mid 60s. So the Idaho PTA, we are an association of volunteers, just like the school board is an association of volunteers. And so the PTA, we have our advocacy day in the fall, and then in the winter time between January and April, which is the legislative session for the state, for Idaho, that's when Idaho PTA has our Day on the Hill. And the Day on the Hill has looked different over the decades. So now in 2026, it looks like parents having an opportunity to come to the Capitol. We provide lunch for all parents that are there, and also the lawmakers. And it's an opportunity for parents to be able to sit down with lawmakers and get to know them, ask them questions, understand what they do. And so sometimes we provide. Sometimes over the years, that has looked like providing an opportunity for parents to take a tour of the Capitol. Sometimes we have started during, we'll go into the House Ed Committee meeting, which always starts at 9:00. And sometimes the PTA president or or another role on the board will make a presentation to the Education Committee to let the Education Committee know what we're focused on this year, or an ask we might have, for them to focus on, or anything like that. And that was something that you got involved on with me. And I'm just curious on your take on what that was like for you. And it doesn't have to necessarily be positive. Don't feel like you have to say. We want your honest take.
No, I appreciate that. So again, as you know, I didn't come from politics stepping into, podcasting. I was just a dude doing shows with a neighbor of mine. And then, it evolved into this. So the whole idea of it's really embarrassing, but I didn't understand the SBA, the IEA. I didn't understand the Administrators Association. I didn't understand any of these things. And for the PTA, here's one: the upside down funnel, right? Or the right side funnel, right? The idea that you have the top of the PTA. Does the top of the PTA tell the people down boots on the ground in the individual areas what should be happening? Or is it the other way around, where it's literally a funnel where it's like, no, you aggregate all the information and that gets distributed up, right? Like these different concepts of, is the leadership of this organization telling people what to think, or is the leadership representing what people think? Mm-hmm. And I didn't understand that the PTA is literally like, no. We take all of the concerns that the people have, the parents in the state of Idaho, we represent them. Whether or not they're members, we're fighting for their kids because we want the best for kids in education in Idaho. And you could want the best for kids within healthcare. You could want the best for kids within employment opportunities. You could want the best for kids in a myriad of ways. But you're like, listen, our carve out is education. And to that end, what I really realized is like, okay, even whatever the membership may be of the state PTA of Idaho, whatever that may be, you're also the only interface that the legislators have with a parent organization. There are PTOs, which are standalone siloed things that might occur at one campus or another campus. There's no state PTO president where they aggregate information from all the PTOs and then arrive at the Capitol with like, hey, we talked to 10,000 members. They all want this. Right? Like this is what they're concerned about. So for me, that was one of these great education pieces, was like, okay, this is kind of like at the core of our democracy. And this is why this is always so complex, because these legislators don't know what's important to everyone across the state. The PTA is doing all of this work to figure out what's relevant, to figure out what needs to be addressed. And then they package it and present it and communicate effectively with the people that are making the laws. So this interaction, this, lunchtime, these presentations, although initially I was like, this is like really stuffy and, why are we even here? What's going on? Then realizing, oh, there's no other way. There's no other group. There's no other person showing up to the capital of the state of Idaho saying, hey, man, we talked to 20,000 parents, or we talked to 10,000 parents, or we represent all of this. this is it, man. This is the important piece. Like, please listen to us. So in that way, it was really cool to experience. Again, initially, I'm like, this seems really just kind of performative. Like, is anybody really caring? But then I was like, oh, this is the only way we can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Well, and one of the things that I've tried to do is get some teenagers at the table too, invite them there, help them, understand what's going on. And we've had some really great, Superintendent Debbie Critchfield has, she comes to the lunches. So it's an opportunity to interact with, the state superintendent. There's been some great lawmakers that have come in and they, they're curious. Of course, they want, the lunches that we've had over the last several years have been catered by culinary arts students that are in high school.
Catered by the culinary arts students? I knew there were kids serving. I didn't know that they had made the food. Mm-hmm. Dude, the coleslaw was lit.
I know.
That was really, really good.
For the last several years, it was the CUNA school kids.
Dude, it was great. The pulled pork and the coleslaw last year was wild.
I know.
Yeah. Way to go, CUNA.
Yeah, they're very good. So ultimately, and the PTA, that's the organization that, funds that. So that's coming up on Tuesday, January 20th. Really hope that parents in the area show up and participate in that. And also, I also know just through my experience that not everyone can show up on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. at the Capitol.
Right.
Other people, people have things going on. So it's also an opportunity for parents to send in their perspectives to people who are going to be there and representing the parent voice, because that's really important too. And there are some lawmakers that are really good about being curious about what parents are thinking. And even more so, there are some lawmakers who are curious and go out and do their part in their communities to reach out to some parents. And there's also the opposite, where there are some lawmakers who stink at interacting with their constituents and sometimes don't seem to care what parents have to say. Now, it's not even necessarily that those people are showing up to lunch, but they might. And so it's a great opportunity just to make a personal connection. And it doesn't have to be something where we're sitting around debating about an education topic. It's really more of an opportunity to get to know people who are representing us as Idahoans and understand a little bit about where they're from, what their perspective is, and then we kind of get an opportunity to share that too. So that's something that I really like about that day.
Could I add one to it? Again, being new to, and again, I'm not a politician. I'm not going to be a politician, but interacting in this world. One thing that I got really freaked out about initially is I got very passionate about certain ideas, like tech safety and with kids. I got really, really passionate about that and, worked really hard with lawmakers to help them understand all these things. And, you don't always get wins. You collect losses, you collect wins. That to me, it's becoming clear, and it probably always should have been, that it's like, listen, man, you get in there, you rough it up, you argue with people. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But that's just the nature of this. And I think for me, initially, I kind of got this exhaustion where I was like, oh my God, I'll forget it. And it's like, listen, you're taking this too personally. You're taking it too personally. You're putting too much emphasis on this either has to happen or we're all dead. It's just, this is the way it goes. And somebody pointed out recently, like politics in Idaho and lawmaking in Idaho is supposed to be painfully slow. It's supposed to be painfully boring because we have these robust checks and balances. We have all this fighting. We have all this tension. And it's the tension that makes sure that only the best things theoretically pop to the surface, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, that was just one of those things in interacting with people. Yeah, you can debate things, right? That's what made me think of it. You can debate things, you can debate policy, but if the policy doesn't go your way, it's like, okay, don't implode. Like, that's the nature of this. And, you might be engaged in a fight over one policy and you might be engaged in that fight for 5 years or 10 years or whatever. And for 10 years, it might go your way. And then the next 10 years, it may not go your way, right? Like for the people that want, for instance, vouchers or a voucher style program, they have not had their way for a long time.
Yep.
Now they have their way. And, maybe in like 10 or 20 years, it'll get reversed or maybe it won't. And it's just like, this is the nature of it. It's just like this big argument.
Yes, it's the nature of it. And I think what's nice is to feel when things don't go your way or you feel like you've been beat up for several years, to have people that you can feel the support from.
Yeah.
Because the nature of it can be, really challenging. And so I want to move on to the next thing. So there's three things I want to make sure I cover in this conversation. So the next thing is...
I love how we were theoretically going to do a short show and we're only to the first of three things.
No, we're moving through this, Matt.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
We're moving through. So the second thing is, one of the things that I noticed, like as Alexis Morgan, I noticed was that there aren't enough for me. I kind of think, oh my gosh, there's so many things happening at the Capitol, but just from decision makers on that primary level regarding kids. And we need more parent leaders around the state to be aware of those things. And so I have a friend and she leads another organization and she's getting into public policy. And so I said, what if we started a council, and what if we invited parent leaders from around the state to just pop into a Zoom call? So it's not that you're required to do anything with the information, but so she was like, yeah, I love this. And I talked to a friend who is kind of in that primary level of decision makers in education. And I said, hey, will you share with me information just regarding what's happening at the Capitol every week? And then, for the rest of the year, maybe we'll just like connect once a month and I can hear some different things. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be education, which is why I started the Idaho Kids Impact Council. Really excited about it. And it's an opportunity for parent leaders around the state to come in to participate in a Zoom call and to hear what's happening regarding Idaho kids in general on that primary level. And for those leaders, then those parent leaders, to be able to take that information back to their communities and whatever that looks like. And so I've got someone on the council who runs a social media account in her community. She's got a lot of followers. And so she thought, yeah, I would love an opportunity to get primary information out to my people. There's another gal who she works within her school district. And so she interacts with a lot of parents outside. She knows a lot of kids, but she interacts with a lot of people in her community on a regular basis. And so she is another excellent one to have on the council. So I'm excited about it and sharing it on here because if I have listeners around the state who are curious or want to participate, please reach out, because this is something that we've got some areas of the state that are covered, and we have some areas where we have some holes. And so I would love to, if you're like a school board member or a lawmaker and a parent in your community that would be great for this, I would love for you to reach out. Don't you love this idea? I reinforce the way I'm thinking about
Listen, I'm telling you right now, I love here's one for you. Idaho Wildlife Federation. It's the longest standing organization to represent recreation, fishing, hunters, fishermen, the whole thing, right? And it was essentially gonzo like 10 years ago. I think they had, like $1,000 in the bank. They had very, very limited membership. And this guy, Brian Brooks, essentially graduated with a master's in conservation and found the organization, was like, okay, what if I do this? Like, I'll take the executive director job. Like, you don't have to pay me. I'm going to build this up. And he slowly started building it up. And then by the time he was done, after his 10 years of building this back up, they had 7 full-time employees. I mean, crushing, really representing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, but it's the participation to be represented. It's the, hey, listen, you got this thing. I have some views. I will share my views with you. I will agree to share my views once a month and tell you what's going on in my area. But when people fail to be willing to be represented or participate, that's when we're all fractured. So yeah, I love what you're talking about. And we need little people, even if you don't have an elected position and you're not a school board member, you're not like the head of the PTA, you could just be a person in the area who wants to be part of something where it's like, let me help you understand kind of boots on the ground, what's happening here and what the concerns are, what the issues are, or whatever it might be. It's that willingness to participate that builds up coalitions and builds up voices. And we see that very much in social media. We have democratized participation and we put value in people by following them, right? So what we do is if somebody has 100,000 followers and they're like a local person, you're like, whoa, you better pay attention to this person. They got like 100,000 followers, right? If somebody has 500 followers, even if the person with 500 followers is saying really, really good stuff, they're like, yeah, like that's cute, but you only have 500 followers. So we have this metric of participation. We've democratized where we want people to be valued, essentially, in this way. But we have to do it outside of social media. We have to do it with the real voices. We have to do it in a participatory manner. So again, yeah, I really, really like that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and like you said, people don't have to be a part of any type of organization. Like you just,
right.
You
could just be a person.
You could be a person. I mean, would love for you to be a person. So yeah, to participate in that. And
are you saying me or in the abstract for anybody listening?
But
I'm terrible on Zoom calls. You know this.
Yes.
I always end up with like the digital sunglasses on.
But it's important. I want people to know that it's nonpartisan. We're not there to tell you how to, think about something that's going on. It's for you to be connected to what's happening in that way. Sure. And one of the things that I realized, and more of kind of like, I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but sometimes I feel like I get to have these opportunities in life and I feel not like it's my thing, but almost like a steward of the opportunity. So meaning that I have had an opportunity over the last many years to be connected to decision makers and to develop relationships and to get this information. And I don't want the information just to live in my brain. I want people to be able to have that kind of access because there's some people who want that access who don't have the opportunity to get it. And so I want them to be able to feel connected to what's happening. And so I want to be helpful in that way, essentially.
Yeah. Listen, 100%. 100%. I think especially seeing your podcast grow, and that's how we originally got connected. And I was like, wow, this lady has some good stuff. The podcast I listened to was you explaining the structure of education within Idaho. You're like, we have a state board of education, and the only elected official on that is the state superintendent. And then there are other people, like all of these different things, right? That's the nature of what you've been doing. It's what I try to do as well, which is, look, we, for whatever reason, have access and a rapport with people that are decision makers that do have information that the average person cannot just sit down with for an hour and understand stuff. So it's like, that's kind of our task now. Right. And I agree with you. You do know things that likely no one else knows. And you do have access to people, not in a nefarious or backdoor way, but like you have relationships with people. It's like, beautiful. Leverage that, share it, help everyone else understand, because it's only through that connection with information that you're going to get better, high information, high value voters, instead of like low information, just responding to whatever they saw on Facebook about what happened in Kentucky. Yeah. And now all of a sudden they're voting in Idaho based on what happened in Kentucky. It's like, it doesn't work this way, man.
No, that, and to, there are a lot of people, and this has been my experience with parents too. Often things are going great. And so then we just become kind of complacent, not in negative, like that's not intended to be negative, but kind of in a way that is, oh, things are going good. I'm just, I'm hopping on the flow here of this path and I'm just going to ride this wave. And what also happens is that when that occurs, sometimes the outside or the maybe sometimes peripheral voices or the people who are really angry about something, they'll start coming to the table or they'll start raising their voices and they'll start getting really loud. And then all of a sudden they're not representing those loud voices are not necessarily representing the majority who are just a little bit more quiet, who either they don't have the time or they don't know how to speak up, or quite frankly, they might not even have the interest to do that. And what I have observed is that we, like parents, kids, the state of Idaho, we need more people to get a little curious about what's going on in the state, whether that's just listening to one more podcast or following someone on social media or asking your friends some questions. Because what I find is that I heard this thing that said, a large percentage of people will say, oh, sure, I really I'm for that idea. Like if you were to throw out something, yep, love that idea. But only 30%, like if 80% of people supported this one idea in education, like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Yep, I'm totally for something like that. And then you were to ask those same 80% to define what the thing is, only 30% could actually define what that thing is. And I just thought, whoa, that's really fascinating when it comes to this one topic. But the whole premise that, oh, it's really valuable for us to be aware of maybe what some of these things are, or,
Sure.
you know,
Couldn't agree more, yeah.
and it's just, it has more to do really with like participation in a community and all that kind of stuff. Don't just sit on the sidelines thinking that because things are great, they're going to stay great. Like I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Oh,
so,
sure.
You know?
Yeah. And you also, I've also seen now, and again, I'm not involved in it to the level you are, but I've also seen within the community, generally, you have like a really, really loud voice that comes in, monotopic, very worked up over one thing, sucks all the oxygen out of the room, and then flames out and disappears. They either get their way or they don't, or they just throw a grenade and disappear and then are not responsible for the fallout of what happens. But we need more steady people, right? You don't have to be a fireball. You don't have to be, like pounding on office doors and making phone calls every single day. You can just be a steady person, because we need steady, right? Because when we don't have enough steady, if we only have like one or two or three people that are like steady and diligently just kind of going through and like doing the boring work, they will easily get overtaken by one radicalized crazy person, and we'll pick whatever crazy you want. Doesn't matter. But it's like, I've seen it play out several times. The crazy person comes in, they don't have staying power. They're not interested in seeing the broader picture or dealing with the implications of what they want. They want what they want. They upset everybody. They throw a grenade. Then some of the steady people are like, I can't do this anymore. Like, oh, they just get burnt out and they disappear. And then there's like no one, because the crazy person came in and they disappeared. And then like you had three people that were doing the diligent, boring work, and now you only got one left, and she's exhausted, and she's like, I can't do this anymore.
Oh my gosh, 1,000%, 1,000%. Like I love the word steady. We need more steady people, and that the Idaho Kids Impact Council is an opportunity to be a steady person and show up and participate in a very low, what would you say? Not low stakes, but in some measure, that's what it is, right? Like
right. You don't have financial risk. You don't have you don't have to quit your job.
Yep.
It's not like high stakes in any. It's just like, look, let's just aggregate information. Let's talk about issues that are coming up in your community. Whatever those issues are, you don't have to be elected. You don't have to you don't have to dox yourself. Feel like you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally.
This gal called me from Pocatello recently. She's a school board member, I believe, and she saw the tech safety program that Superintendent Critchfield put out. She saw the article in the
Idaho Ed News.
Ed News. There it is.
Yep.
And we had this great conversation for like 30 minutes. She has 7 kids, I think. It was like, very involved in education. And it was a beautiful thing. She's like, listen, I really want to make this happen. And she was obviously involved, but it's like, it's that kind of thing. All it took was one email. She just emailed me, and then I called her, and then we had this great conversation. And I'm going to connect with her again, because I'm going to go out to ISU I want to do an interview in their nuclear reactor facility. It's going to be fantastic. Anyway, it's all pop in, but again, it's that kind of thing. It's like just a little effort. And you know what's amazing? I do not discount how anxiety provoking it may have been, or how, when you have to email someone and you're like, I just can't.
Yeah.
I just can't.
I know exactly how that feeling.
And it's so funny. It's like just one email. What people can do is they can post on social media. That's no problem. But if you transition into a formalized email where you have to be like, my name is X.
Yeah.
I am thinking about Y. Yeah. Could we talk? That's a barrier that knocks out like 98% of people. And so it's like, great, thanks, lady. And like, how easy was that? You left your phone number. I called you right away. There it goes.
Oh, yeah. I actually had a very similar experience in that the community schools grant that just happened. This you can go check out if you haven't heard about it. Go check it out. It happened in December in terms of the federal government. They canceled it, and then
they reinstated it.
They reinstated it. And, there were a lot of advocates involved. Superintendent Debbie Critchfield. Idaho Ed News put out a really great article about how she really was like the key to getting that fully reinstated. And it was just so fascinating. Actually, the biggest issue that she discovered was that the organization, United Way Treasure Valley, that had that is the facilitator, like the grant passes through them to school districts in the state of Idaho. They had submitted an amendment in September to change some wording in their grant because of the new administration. The Trump administration that is in right now has different priorities than the Biden administration when this grant was approved. And so the United Way Treasure Valley was totally on it. And they said, you know what, we see these things that need to be changed. There were only like 2 or 3 things. So they submitted the amendment with those changes. And what Superintendent Debbie Gritchfield found out was that that amendment got misplaced on the federal level, which was why the grant got denied. Canceled, which is why not denied, it got canceled. And then when the United Way Treasure Valley submitted their appeal, the feds, nope, they denied the appeal. And that's when Superintendent Critchfield went in and did a bunch of sleuthing and found out that the United Way Treasure Valley had done their due diligence. They'd finished their responsibility back in September. And she found that out last minute. And on December 31st, which was the day the grant was going to end, it was reinstated. I mean,
God bless.
I mean,
snap Debbie Critchfield.
Snap. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, super great. I was really, the reason I was telling you that was because I did a podcast on the community school strategy and helping people understand like what this is going to mean for the state of Idaho and the 47 schools that are using this grant for their school community. And I got an email from a gal who, she said, hey, I listened to your podcast and these are all the things that I have questions about. And I live in this area and I have never heard of this before and it's really fascinating to me. And so I answered her questions and then went in and shared resources and said, these are the people to follow up with. Like, these are the experts in this area. And she responded back and just said, hey, thank you so much. Really appreciate, this information.
Doing the Lord's work, Alexis Morgan.
No, but just to your point that, hey, I like getting the emails where people are curious about the thing that we have, going on. I'll tell you what, though, and I'm pretty sure that you probably feel the same way. I get a lot of emails from people around the United States who are those podcast, like they're trying to help people get on. And they're like, hey, I listened to this episode and I love this thing. And I'm thinking, you used AI to figure out what was in there. And they're like, I have this excellent guest. This person would be a guest. And I'm like, I'm not going to respond to this. No. And then I get the follow-ups. Just wanted to give you one more opportunity to capture this individual on your show. I think they'd be great here. Those are the emails that I would love to not get those emails. I
would love to not get them too. I have another, and just so people understand, these are not people that have actually listened to the show. They used AI to figure out like, okay, you had this conversation. That happens to me all the time. I loved your conversation about the transportation issues within the Treasure Valley. I think it was so insightful. And I'd like to propose a guest, Alexis Morgan, who happened to work in law enforcement for 30 years in New York and is I was like, public transportation and a New York cop? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And of course, you know what the standard response is now? I just say, can they make it to Boise? Ooh. And the answer is always no. I'm like, well, then I'm not doing a show with them. All they want to do, these are junky PR firms. They're terrible. You know, the ones that I get now that I wish I could end? Some PR firm figured out that I get sent junk stats all day long. Idaho kids are obsessed with music, right? That's the headline. And it's like 27% of Idaho kids, play an instrument, and that's, top 10% out of the state or out of the country, or like Idaho is drowning in grocery debt. And then it's like Idahoans spend X amount of dollars. So it's these random statistics that they send to my inbox like 3 times a day. And I try to block the sender, but they're always from different senders. And it's always like Alexis Morgan, PR, Matt, PR, like blah, 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 at, junk stats PR, and I can't get rid of them and I can't get off the list. They're driving me insane. I have something that I really want to tell you right now. We have to pause the episode though.
Okay.
We're back. Sorry about that. Thanks for listening. That's pretty crazy though, huh?
That is pretty crazy. Yeah, sorry, we're having an inside moment
Yeah,
here.
a moment.
Yeah, a moment.
Okay.
So the last thing that I just want to get to is something that you're going to be doing on your show, and you've invited me to participate. So will you share?
Yeah. So now I can say last year, 2025, I covered the legislative session. Now here's one of the problems. I'm not a politician. I'm not a policy person. I'm a dude with a microphone and a camera. And in engaging in all of these things, I would hear policy proposals that I would try to get an understanding on, where it's like, okay, is this good? Is this bad? Or like, okay, this makes sense. Like, okay, why would anybody be upset with this? But what I would find out after the fact is like, okay, well, that's actually problematic. That sounds great. Okay. Sounds great. But that's a problem for these reasons. Again, the SBA. Is there a school? Do the school boards object to this? Okay. Why would they object to this? Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense then. Like, okay, well, you can't do this. There are proposals that come into conflict when you apply them on a broader policy or a broader scale that I am ignorant about, right? You, almost being Dr. Morgan in a PhD in public policy, you have, like 18 months or something left. What I want to do is say, hey, look, at the end of every week or every 2 weeks or whenever it is, because our legislative session is really fast. It's only like 12 weeks, So we would do a series of episodes where it's like, okay, these are the policies that people proposed. What do you think about that from a policy lens? Like what are the problems here legislatively? Now, there's some that likely you won't be able to weigh in on perfectly. Like if somebody proposes an election thing, you're like, well, you may or may not know about a constitutional right to an anonymous ballot, how that plays out with this, or here's one for you. Ada County, which you live in and I live in. Ada County has ballot verifier. What ballot verifier is, every single ballot that's cast in the state of Idaho, in Ada County, a PDF copy of that is produced online. Now, these don't have names on them or anything. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you can see the ballot. So for people that are like, how was this counted? I want to see the ballots. Here are all of the ballots in the entire county, like 300,000 votes cast or something. Here's the ballot, and here's how the machine recorded it. So you can match, like, okay, they voted for Alexis on the ballot. I can see that clearly. The machine recorded it as Alexis. Okay, great. No problem. There's a policy anxiety that some people have, which is vote harvesting. Okay. Specifically, say I'm a bad landlord. Okay. And I have some not very well economically supported tenants. Say I have an apartment complex with 200 homes. I go to those people one-on-one. I'm like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to vote for my guy, or I'm going to jack your rent up next year. I swear I'll do it. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, how do I even prove that? This is what you're going to do. You're going to write this number 3456 on your ballot. And I'm going to be able to scan ballot verifier, and I'm going to find 3456. It's not your name. It's a number only I know. And if you don't have it the way I want it, your rent's going up 20%.
Stop it. Does that really happen?
So this is a thing that happens that is potentially happening with having a picture of the ballot. So there are some states that like this ballot verifier, and there are other states that are like, no, man, because I don't want the tenant in the in the fictitious apartment complex being taken by this thing. So you can see there are these nuances where I anticipate in some areas like elections that I'm actually really, really educated on for an average civilian. There are some areas where I'm like, okay, I probably won't be asking you about election things, but from other big policy things, I'd love your view. So that's essentially what I would like to have, like this policy expert coming in and applying like, okay, hey, this policy might sound good, but it actually wasn't supported by the people that it will affect. Why is that? Well, it's like, because this policy or this proposed law was not actually originated in the state of Idaho. This was one that was largely brought from out of state, carbon copied over here, and now they're trying to run it without actual input from the stakeholders in the policy. So things like that. And again, I didn't even understand that concept until you brought it up like a couple of years ago. I'm like, stakeholders, like, what is that? Like, is we at like the Outback? I don't know what you're saying, right? Anyway, so that's it. That's my idea. And you've graciously agreed.
Yeah, I'm excited about it because, grateful for the opportunity to have that, acknowledging that, anyways, been studying public policy in my PhD. But one of the things that I'm excited about is that working to try to bring just a couple of different perspectives to the table
Yeah.
versus, I mean, I do think it's really cool that the lawmaker comes in and he talks about, he or she talks about the piece of legislation, but it definitely is like one perspective or why they want it, why they're working on it. And so, kind of talking about several different moving parts of that piece of legislation to help people understand, and to kind of help us understand a little bit better. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. This legislative session is going to be cray-cray. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be, because it's a primary season, right? So we have the May primary election. That is the big election in Idaho.
Yep.
That's where most of the elections are going to be determined to head up the general, right? So that's happening.
Yes.
And you had a lot of mix-up over the last two elections with very established people, like Senator Chuck Winder. He got knocked out. He's like senator for 30 years or something. He got knocked out by someone. Yep. You had a lot of these turnovers where there was an enormous amount of money that flooded into the state of Idaho. All kinds of wild stuff. And it's all going to come to a head in the next 4 months.
Yeah. And I will say I'm really excited for the Ranch podcast and for the people of Idaho because a little bit over a year ago, so it was in the fall of 24, that you had this idea of doing covering the 25 ledge session in that way. And I remember you told me about the idea and I was like, yes, that is so amazing. And I helped you find a place for the studio.
Yes.
And so to be able to kind of watch that unfold, and it was successful. And so for you to be able to, tell these lawmakers and people around the state, this is what I said I was going to do. This is what I did. And I did what I said what I was going to do. And to have watched that unfold. And now we're, coming up to the next session. And anyways, it's exciting to me. It's
and
exciting.
shout out for you when you were the PTA president. Shout out for the current president, Jamie. Hugely supportive of me being in your guys' space. You have that downtown space. It was not being utilized every single day. And again, you graciously opened it up, which allowed me, the number of interviews I've done with Superintendent Debbie Critchfield down there, so numerous. I must have done at least 30 interviews during last year's legislative session, all about education from all different perspectives. So it's because you offered me that space and because the PTA is continuing to supply that space, I am able to do all of this stuff around education. So bless it, man. Thank you.
It's super awesome.
Yeah, it is.
So Tuesday, January 20th is the Idaho PTA Day on the Hill. Parents can come. Let us, contact Idaho. Go to idahopta.org to register for that. Then the Idaho Kids Impact Council. If you're curious or interested or want to know more, contact me. My information is on the show notes or at the Idaho Lady on Instagram and TikTok.
I love that you have that handle, by the way. It's so great. Every time I see a post, at the Idaho Lady.
Idaho Lady. And then third, stay tuned for what's happening on the Ranch podcast with the public policy Recaps. Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Public
weekly
policy.
recaps.
Yeah. So thanks so much for coming on the show today, Matt. It was great to have you. The conversation was awesome. And cheers to everyone.
God bless. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of The Purple Zone. Thanks for being here. If you liked what you heard, leave a review on your fave podcast app or on YouTube. And from me to you, the heart of The Purple Zone says community is where policy comes to life.